So speaking of war stories, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. The greatest code save of your experience. We were talking about the D-Fib. Talk to me about that call and that
Well,
classic war story that I personally have not ever heard. So I'm excited for this.
it's still warm and fuzzies me to no end. So like halfway through my report, she seizes, like, and one of the
Yeah.
residents was like, "Oh my God, this isn't a STEMI, this is a seizure." And I
No,
went,
it's
"Oh."
not.
I walked over, I grabbed the paddles off the defibrillator. I went like this. Somebody put gel on them. I did this, put it on her chest, did a quick look. She was in V-fib, shocked her once. She stayed in V-fib. I shocked her twice. Then she went back into a sinus rhythm. I put the paddles back up and I went, "You guys are all set? I'm out of here." And I walked out. I, and I'm like, I'm in the biggest hospital in Boston with the fanciest people and all these residents and interns and nurses and attending doctors. And the paramedic had to go over and do the paddles because you guys couldn't figure it out. So I was like, "Yep." And I walked out. My partner's like, "What'd you do?" And I'm like, "That was the coolest thing ever."
Welcome to Last Known Vitals. My name is John Smith, and today I am sitting down with Maurice, also known as Moe, to some of you, Big Daddy Paquette, an emergency medicine PA in southern New Hampshire and a longtime fire deputy chief and paramedic just outside the state capital. With over 32 years of experience, Moe brings a kind of insight that only comes from a lifetime in EMS, fire service, and emergency medicine. Moe, thanks for being here today with me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm actually kind of excited. This is, I've never, uh, once before I've been invited on a podcast, but it was pretty much just me talking to a computer. There was no interview part of it. So this is fun.
Yeah, and again, we're gonna see where this goes, and there's so many things that we could talk about. I've known you for a handful of years now, and I want to start off with one of the funny things that we talked about a little bit. The name Big Daddy. I have yet to hear that be used for you, and so now I need to know what is the origin of this nickname.
I have no real recall. So this is back, I started at Rock in 97. Um, Somehow, I mean, I was a big guy at baseline. Like I was always super heavy. Um, so it just ended up being one or two people caught on and then it just stuck. And now even today, there's people I haven't seen for 25 years, 30 years, and you'll walk up to them at a meeting or something and they're like, "Oh my God, Big Daddy." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I mean, everybody thinks it's hysterical. They're like, they have no idea. I'm like, no, I had a life long before this. Like this was not, I mean, everybody had their own, like I still see a guy that you probably know that worked down in Lawrence and I called him Meat Stick. Like, I mean, that's just name stick. That's just the way it goes. But yeah,
Absolutely, no,
every now and then you'll see somebody that'll come into the hospital. They'll be like, "Hey, Big Daddy." I'm like, "Yeah." And then all the nurses are like,
Oh, I love it. I love it. It personalizes you, you know what I mean? Like it because you've been in
"Yeah."
this game for so long and so many people know you. So I can imagine every now and again you have those little, trip down memory lane moments where somebody you haven't seen in a while and one of those fun little nicknames comes up. So that's got to be fun for you, I imagine.
It is. It's kind of the warm and fuzzies about all this. Like we spend all of our time in, well, not all of our time. We spend a lot of time in such bad situations and just crappy experiences where you're working hard and like there's really no niceness to it. And then, you see an old friend or an old person you used to work with and they're like, "Oh my God, Big Daddy." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Meat Stick." And there's big hugs and there's always like, there's an instant connection and you're automatically back to, the worst call you've ever done with that person or the nastiest thing you've ever seen or the funnest, we've never laughed so much, sitting on a couch in a building in Nashua. So,
So
yeah.
you've been in this game for 32 years. Now, you started off as an explorer and worked your way up all the way to what's currently known as a physician associate. And we're going to talk about that name change in a little bit. But talk to me a little bit about how you got into healthcare. Because when I asked you, you said, you really didn't do anything before it. It was like your journey right from the get-go. So talk to me a little bit about that path.
It's funny, as I was kind of prepping for all this, I was contemplating whether I had the availability of getting, so I've got pictures, from, I was less than one, and my dad dressed me up in a fire department uniform with a patch and a badge, and it's a baby picture of mine. And if I could have found it, I would have brought it.
That would have been
And then,
amazing.
right. And then in like the late 70s, there's a picture of me and my uncle who had nothing to do with EMS, but I'm wearing a plastic fire helmet that says emergency. I've got a stethoscope around my neck, and I'm carrying one of the dolls on a litter. Like, it's literally, I don't know how, I don't know why. My dad was on the fire department. He was one of the early EMTs in the state of New Hampshire when they started doing EMTs. And it was really there was never a question. The feeling of family and the feeling of connection, just visiting my dad at the fire station was, super important. And then when I got to the age where I could join the Explorer program and join the Explorers, and I mean, it just like literally, it was like there was no question. Well, there were some questions. I was like, no, I could be a doctor. That'd be way better. And then I went to college for that, and that did not work out.
Now, why didn't that work out?
I think I wasn't emotionally prepared for going away to college. So 18 years old, essentially the first time away from home, doing like a pre-med, like a biology pre-med major. And by the end of the first semester, I was like, I'm just going to go home, and dropped out. It was classes were never important. I mean, high school, you had to finish because you had to finish, but college, you didn't have to go. It was great.
Right. When you're young, I feel like the maturity level sometimes just isn't there. That's how I felt anyways. Like I myself am a late bloomer. I just recently got my first associate's degree at 39 years old. So,
Yeah.
looking back, like there's no way I could have achieved some of the things that I have recently, at that young age without the life experience and again, just maturing. So
Yeah.
you ended up dropping out of college and kind of going back home. And then how did you find, like, so you always wanted to be a fireman, and the med school thing maybe didn't work out, but you obviously were still very active at that point, and you ended up getting your EMT, but you actually got a few different roles because back then the titles were very different. So reading over the questions that I kind of sent you just to kind of prepare for this as well, you had mentioned that you were what was it, an EMT D-Fib?
Yeah. So
What the hell is that?
when I first got my basic in 92, we didn't have AEDs. The only thing they had was a LifePak 5, the paddles defibrillator, and you couldn't use it unless you had a separate, like I had to take a separate class to be like, to learn rhythm strips on a 3-lead monitor. Like the screen was like that big. And then to use the paddles to actually defibrillate somebody, like you had to take a separate class.
So hold on, were you actually like the whole like clear, and then
Well, that's one of my
get 'em with it?
greatest story. It's one of my greatest stories ever. Like best war story like I've ever. And that was when I was a paramedic. It was amazing. We'll get to it eventually. But
Absolutely. Don't we're definitely going to get
no,
to
no,
that because
it won't.
I'm very
It'll,
eager to hear that one.
it's
So you took this extra class and they
yeah,
taught you like EKG rhythm interpretation right at the early stages of a basic. So again, that's something that's really changed obviously with the invention of the AED. When did
yep.
that come around? Do you remember?
They had it before me, so they must have had it, in the mid
Oh, okay.
'80s. I mean, it wasn't anything new. Like, my mother worked with a lady at the bank who was an EMT, a D-Fib EMT. She might have even been an I when I started, and she was on the volunteer squad in Milford, and she gave me her D-Fib book. Like it was a whole separate book on just defibrillation. It was fun.
No, no shit. That's crazy. And then
Yeah.
I've talked to some of you guys that have been doing this pretty much as long as I've been alive, and you guys used to talk about how you would have to take certain leads and move them about to get an official 12 leader, something to that effect. Tell me how that really was back then and trying to provide good care and like how that's evolved so far. I can't even think of being able to do the job with the equipment that you guys had. So talk to me a little bit about that.
We didn't have 12 leads. I mean, they taught, they said there was, they described a way where you could do all that, but we had no idea. At least not. I mean, I got my EMT in 92, my I in 93, and then I went to paramedic school in 95. And I'm pretty sure, at least in my class, when we did cardiology, we still didn't do 12 leads um, in paramedic school. Like, we did rhythms, and we did a ton of rhythms, but I don't, either that or it might have been after lunch at the Chinese restaurant, so I don't remember it. But there was we did not spend we did a lot of time on rhythms, but not a lot of time on 12 leads. So but I think it was probably a year or two into my career when they first got a 12 lead on the bus.
And then they wanted you guys to go through all that, and I imagine there was some additional education and training on 12 lead interpretation and all that stuff for you guys then.
It was basic stuff. It was nothing significant. I don't believe they transmitted at that time. They didn't, and I never really, it's going to sound shitty, but I never really, like, grabbed onto it. I was kind of I already know what I'm doing. Why are you trying to tell me something new? It wasn't until later on in my career, I'm like, oh, that might be important.
Right.
Yeah, it was not a thing. It became a thing, and, I got better at it, but initially
Well,
not a thing.
that's change, and you know how we all are. Like, nobody likes change. It's scary. It's the unknown, you know?
Oh God, yeah. That's the old adage that comes along. And it's funny, as you get older, you start to bring around all these stupid sayings that everybody's been saying for like 50 years, and you're like, oh. And you just join the club. You're like, oh, there's only two things they don't like in the fire service: change and the way things are.
Right.
So
I feel like, we all look at these sayings and these phrases that we've heard growing up through in this world of emergency medicine and the fire service and all that thing. And it just becomes more of like, oh, that wasn't just a saying. That's kind of reality. Like, you start to really see how these things unfold, and you get a different perspective on them as you grow into it and you mature again. But, I do think it's fun, looking back on the early years of my own career, and then just seeing like how much of a little shit I was, and how the arrogance and the just not knowing anything, and then as years go by,
it's
you start to put some things together, and you're like, oh wow, well, I wish I could get those days back.
well, I mean, I think there's a lot of parts to that. The part of it was when we worked, we were the shit. I mean, that's just the way it was. I mean, it doesn't, you could ask any of us when I was on the streets in the, main Vegas, we were the cat's meow, the bee's knees. Like, we were it. Like, we walked around with our chests out like there was nobody's business. I mean, you worked P2 down in Lawrence. I mean, Christ, even from my perspective, the P1 and the P2 medics in Lowell and Lawrence were higher echelon than where I was. So, I mean, you worked in a system that was what my system looked up to. We owned all of that swagger, and we owned it for a reason, because we were really good at what we did.
No, and you're 100% right, with talking about Rockingham, and we can talk a little bit about P2 in a second here, but like the Rock days, when I first got into EMS, it was right at the very end of Rock. And they even right to the very last minute, that was where everybody wanted to work. You did everything you could to build your resume to try to get a spot in there. And yeah, like, you're 100% right. Like, that was where, like, the cream of the crop, if you will. And
Yeah.
and then I was very fortunate to get that experience, and then even more so to get a chance to go down to Lawrence, like we just said. And yeah, those guys down there, like, they reminded me every single day, I have so much to learn, and it was such a fortunate experience for me to get in there early on in my career, and I can't express how grateful and thankful I am to those guys for really teaching me how to be a good paramedic. And those are experiences that I will take, to the day I retire. So you were a paramedic, and then you also were really into the Explorer program, and I imagine in the fire side. What led you into both the fire and the medicine side? Because to me, that's two different worlds, and I know there's a lot of crossover, of course, but again, I've always seen it as just two different worlds, and they expect two different jobs out of the same person. So how did you find yourself in both of those worlds?
Well, it's funny. So a long, long time ago when I did my EMT and I started in my hometown as a dispatcher, I got an opportunity to take the firefighter 1 class. Took it, passed it, in New Hampshire, they used to have a thing called career level firefighter. So it was the certification you needed to get a full-time job. And then all of a sudden they invented this physical agility test. And there's things that fat people shouldn't do. And one of them is try to pass the physical agility test. So the the fire department was always in my soul. Um, but EMS was my opportunity to participate because I couldn't pass the physical agility test. So I lived vicariously through my dad. Well, my dad is retired, but I lived vicariously through my brother and my best friend, who are both very successful firefighters. I still followed it, listened to it, was a whacker. I'd go to fires, I'd chase fire trucks. Like I do all the same shit that everybody does. Um, but I just couldn't work in it because I didn't want to, and it wasn't didn't want to, couldn't pass the test. I probably could have, at some point. But the concept of trying and failing would have been horribly embarrassing. So I was better off not trying.
All right, fair enough. So, but you work as the deputy fire chief right now, yes?
So, come back around 2009, I lived where I grew up and then I moved to Manchester. And then after I got married, we bought a house up here in Pembroke, and the next town over in Allenstown, they have the fire department and they did EMS responses. So I came down and I said, "Hey, I'm a paramedic." And they said, "Cool. What's that fire certification you have over there?" And I'm like, "Well, it's from 1993. And they went, "Great, you're a firefighter and a paramedic." And I went, "I'm super obese. Like, I should not be dressing up and going into burning buildings." And they're like, "Okay." And then and I said, "That's not really what I'm here for." And they said, "Okay." And then I had weight loss surgery and I lost weight. So I became a little bit more active, still with safety stuff in mind. And then slowly through the years, there was nobody left. So when they named a new fire chief, I was the most senior officer below chief. And they said, "Do you want to do this?" And I went, "Sure." So that's how I ended up being the deputy fire chief. It was kind of, there was not a lot of options, but it's worked out. This is a lot of fun. This is my fun job. It's not financially or fiscally, beneficial for anybody. Um, but it gives me some level of participation, and I still get to work on the ambulance and I still get to work on the fire department.
It just goes to show your level of passion with the fire service, the EMS, the medicine, like all of it, and just all around like the first responder world. You've been in this for so long, and like every which way, you just continue to grow and be able to provide different levels of care and different aspects. So I think that just again shows your character. I think that's cool, man.
And it's funny because my wife will take me to functions and parties, and I just stand in the corner and don't interact with anybody. Or one of our friends used to have like a summer cookout at their house, and I would go and I would migrate to the grill and I'll be like, "Hey, do you want me to cook that chicken for you?" And I'll start cooking chicken to just distract me and give me something to do so that I don't have to interact with people. But last year they had somebody on one of the social media platforms organized a Rockingham reunion.
Yes.
And my wife and I went, and my wife's like, "It's just amazing. Like, you go to those things and you are the center of attention. You are big daddy to everybody. There are retired chiefs, deputy chiefs, battalion chiefs, old paramedics, plumbers, everybody. And they're like surrounding you. And like, your people are you behave so much different in that group of people than you do with any other group of people." And I'm like, it's just, I can go into any fire station and sit down at the coffee table and bullshit with the best of them, but then you go to like some corporate meeting or something, you're like, just stand over here.
It's funny because as medics and things like that, we have this sense of humor, and sometimes inappropriate things come out of our mouths at the most opportunistic times. And I find it I find myself similarly, like kind of trying to stay reserved because sometimes I just don't know when to shut the hell up. you know and
Well,
and
it's
you
not,
work.
I mean, yeah,
Go ahead.
it's that plus, the stuff that's going to come out of your mouth, nobody else would understand. Like, they won't they won't get it as a joke. They think you're actually an asshole, and
Right.
you're kidding. And they don't. They may not get it, and then it doesn't bother me because I know in my heart that I'm not like actually being inappropriate, or like there's no harm actually meant in the comments. Like,
Right.
but other people don't see it that way. And in this kind of culture, you get shit on quickly. So
Yes, very quickly. And it's nice to be able to, fit in with people that just understand you. And, like you said, you can literally go into any firehouse and sit down and shoot the shit like, you've known these people for 20 years. And I
yeah,
feel like that is very common amongst people that are in the first responder world. We understand each other. And it's like you can be friends with anybody in this world. And that's what I think is really cool about it personally.
yeah, it's very warm and fuzzy, and I think that's part of. Again, it turns into a generational us versus them thing. Like the newer generation, and we see it every day in the hospital when they come in. They don't necessarily have the swagger, but they also don't necessarily have the stuff to back up the swagger. Um, and you worry a little bit that they're going to lose that ability to get along with it, like to be in that kind of family and feel the things that we felt, and that connection to other people. So
What do you think is the driving force behind that change?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just generational. I think the default to just blame a generation is kind of crappy, but the way we used to, you know, chew up and spit out our young is not necessarily the right way to, there's pluses and minuses to everything, but they don't, the newer generation doesn't take well to the necessarily the way we were taught. So I think there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. I hate to say it's just generational. I think we have some responsibilities and they have some responsibilities. They have to want to be that, and we have to be able to figure out how to get them to be that. It's our responsibility to get them there. It's their responsibility to accept it and take it.
I think it's very reasonable to say that the generations are very different. When you were younger and kind of growing up in medicine, it was very much chew up your young and spit them out, the whole thing. And, I feel like even for my generation, it was just coming out of that. I felt like I had some really good mentors and I didn't really have too many people be assholes to me, in my early years. And I feel like a lot of you guys that I talk to have a lot more experience with that, like, just people kind of just being assholes to you when you're growing up in this. And, whether it's they're being an asshole or want you to learn, I think there's a happy medium there as well. The approach these days is definitely different. But, I think you're right with it. It is generational. Like, it's just a different world we live in today. So it's, I guess you have to figure out this new approach to make sure that desire to want to learn and be good is still there on like the new person's perspective. But also, how do we go about really teaching and mentoring the new generation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the teaching methodology nowadays is different. When I went to school, my school was full time. You were there Monday through Friday. You did a year worth of classroom stuff with practicals and time in the labs doing skills and running through ACLS and doing all the things you had to do. And then when summertime came around and your second year started and you were essentially doing ride time for the next year, the people that were precepting you had also come from my program. So they knew what the program was and they had very high expectations. And there was not a lot of, hand holding and there was some educational part of it, but the majority of it was just, you're expected to know what you're doing and you're expected to, it was hospital, clinical, and then ride time. But it was all like, there was an expectation that you knew what you were talking about. And you may not have the experience to do it, but you should have the skill set to be able to do it. And then you just need the fine tuning to kind of get you through all the stuff so that you get at least hands on everything a couple of times, so that when it comes time to do work on your own, you've done it before.
Right. Yeah. And again,
Now,
times are definitely changing for sure.
nowadays there's people that I don't understand. And unfortunately, this is going to sound old manish, because I see, like, we have new hires and we have people that go and get their A, and some people that are going to paramedic school, and like they go to class, they go through the whole program, they get to the end of the class, and whereas when we finished the instructor part, or like the classroom part of it, and we met all the things, like the class was over, you went and took your registry test, the next available registry test. Like, when I finished paramedic school in May of 97, June of 97, I was taking the paramedic test. Like, it was not, I've got people here at the fire department that passed their A class a year and a half ago and haven't tested, or they've tested, failed, and haven't gone back to test. I'm like, you're never going to pass. Like, there's no, and I've got other people that just, the classes are all online. I couldn't work remote because I'll just be distracted by like YouTube videos and stuff. Like, I'm never going to be able to take a class, and like, I can't sit here and just look at a computer screen. So to see people that go to class and it's all online, and then they come in on a Tuesday and are expected to, to be able to pass a test, it's just not the way I learned.
And I think everybody does learn differently, and I can appreciate that as being someone that does not learn like the traditional way. But I think you're right with like this kind of world, like you really need to be in class and have the opportunity to have that hands-on experience, ask the questions directly right then and there, especially on those earlier stages, like the EMT basic. I talk about it all the time. Like that was one of the hardest classes I ever took because it was all foreign language to me. Like I didn't know shit, like I knew nothing. So to do that online, and I just don't, I don't know. I'm sure some people are able to do it, but I'm right there with you where it's like, how do you come out of that and be competent? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, at least able to function. I don't expect competence right off the beginning. I expect functionality. I expect you to be able to talk to a patient, get a history, figure out how to do vital signs, and transport somebody to the hospital, and know when you need to get help. And that's, the nuances and the finesse of it all will come eventually. But just be functional. Just be able to go on a call that I don't have to worry about you.
Right. And I just feel like the online, especially again, those early entry level positions, I just don't know that that's the best approach, but that's just my opinion. And
I figured it out maybe a year or two ago. I told my wife, I'm like, I just figured it out. And she said, what's that? I said, I just figured out we are a generation of, like, it doesn't matter anymore. Like the younger generation thinks we're old, and it doesn't matter what we say because we're just old. And the older generation is either dead, and their opinion is just, oh, those young kids, like, it doesn't really matter. And so I told them, like, we are really inconsequential in this giant society. I'm going to war story my way through something, and young people are going to be like, oh, Jesus, that story again. And then they're going to walk away and like, ah, we've heard that. Yeah, everything was better when you were there. Yeah, great. Yeah,
but
it was amazing.
It's the classic full circle. It's classic full circle. You know what I mean? Like, as I'm growing, I'm feeling the same way on certain aspects, and I imagine my opinions will change as the older I get, and that's like the circle of life. But so speaking of war stories, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. The greatest code save of your experience. We were talking about the D-Fib. Talk to me about that call and that classic war story that I personally have not ever heard. So I'm excited for this.
It's still warm and fuzzies me to no end. So when I left Rock in 2004, I went down to Massachusetts, spent a couple of years working at Cataldo. We went to some projects in Everett on a Thursday. Like, I literally remember it was a Thursday night. It was the projects. It was dark, and we went in, and the fire department was there. And I had the, boots unzipped, not just shuffling my feet, just regular, big city shit.
I can just see it.
Yeah, and there's a lady sitting on her couch, and she's like, "Oh, I'm having chest pain," and it's the same pain that I have when I have a heart attack. And she wasn't old; she might have been in her like mid 40s, early 50s, somewhere in there. And she wasn't super big; she was just like average size. And I'm like, yep, okay, get up. And we walk out to the ambulance. We put her in the back of the bus, and I turned the lights on, and I went, oh, that's gray. And I went, okay, so this is probably bad. So we skipped the local hospital. We were going to go right into the Mass General. We did a 12 lead. I think she had elevation, so I called it in. I think it was probably before I ever knew the whole don't give nitro on inferior STEMIs and stuff. And I don't remember if it was inferior or where it was, but it was clearly she was having a STEMI. She was having pain. I ended up giving her aspirin. I gave her nitro. The ST elevations actually went down. Her pain, she was almost pain-free by the time we got to the general. And we pull in, we follow the thing. They're like, yep. They bring us into the big trauma room in Mass General. And there's people. The attendings are by the door. The residents are in the room. All the nurses are there. My partner and I go in. We sheet her over to the thing. We pull off all the wires. I start giving my report because that was right around when they started the silent, like everybody has to shut up so the paramedic can do his report thing.
Yeah.
And they used to actually have a recorder, like they'd have a camera and they'd be recording these things so that they could debrief afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So like halfway through my report, she seizes, like, and one of the residents was like, "Oh my God, this isn't a STEMI, this is a seizure." And I went, "Oh." I walked over, I grabbed the paddles off the defibrillator. I went like this. Somebody put gel on them. I did this, put it on her chest, did a quick look. She was in V-fib, shocked her once. She stayed in V-fib. I shocked her twice. Then she went back into a sinus rhythm. I put the paddles back up and I went, "You guys are all set? I'm out of here." And I walked out. And I'm like, I'm in the biggest hospital in Boston with the fanciest people and all these residents and interns and nurses and attending doctors. And the paramedic had to go over and do the paddles because you guys couldn't figure it out. So I was like, yep. And I walked out. My partner's like, "What'd you do?" And I'm like, "That was the coolest thing ever."
Absolutely.
She went up to the cath lab. She got stented or whatever. And I guess the rumor was the attending doctor went out to the waiting room looking for her family. And he said, "Oh, are you Mrs. So-and-so's family?" And they're like, "Yeah." They go, "Yep, the paramedics did a really good job saving her while we all watched. So she's upstairs in the cath lab. She's better now." It's like,
oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it was fun.
See, there's so many good moments like that where you just, and then of course there's the other side to it, but that's such a classic moment where you'll never forget that, and
well, I mean, it's one of those, like, it's one of those things, like, it was so, like, there was never a question. Like, it was all reactionary. Like, you never thought about it. You never had to, like, consider it twice. Like, you're like, "Oh, this is that. I need to fix that. This is how I know how to fix it." And now, and it was quick. Like, it was instantaneous. Like, I was like, "Oh, nope, this is bad." Put the paddles on, a quick look, shock, charge, shock, all done. And it was like, there was no thought to it. Like, nowadays, even, and I see it in the hospital, like, get out the Lucas, get the pads out, unzip the thing, tear off the wires, do this, do that. Nothing's really, and I mean, there's that whole, slow is steady and steady is fast concept and stuff, but there's just not a lot, like, it doesn't seem as dramatic, I guess, nowadays than it did back then. And it was just rote. It was just what you did. Like, you knew your ACLS algorithms. And we didn't have one. We had like 7. Like, we had a card like this long of like individual algorithms for ACLS. And, we were expected to know it. And I'm sure they still do. And I mean, I'm technically sure I'm still supposed to remember it, in my role now, but I have people around me that know it probably somewhat better than I do. And all I do is nod and give orders. Like, it's fine.
So yeah, let's actually talk about that. So we've talked a lot about your EMS career and all that stuff, but you're a physician associate, and so I want to start off really quickly. That name recently changed from physician assistant, and
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's more of an accurate description. Tell me from your perspective why that name change and what that means, and kind of give me your perspective on it.
So the name change was, initially started by some professional organizations. Like, everybody has their professional organization. So the emergency doctors have the ACEP, the American College of Emergency Physicians. PAs have the American Academy of Physician Associates. Well, it was always physician assistants. And then in the past couple of years, they've kind of transitioned to the word associate. just because of the connotations that go along with the word assistant. In description wise, a medical assistant and a nursing assistant, in the hierarchy of healthcare, are lower, and not just so the concept that a physician's assistant or physician assistant is actually a provider is kind of a misnomer. And when they invented the position back in the late 60s and early 70s, that was kind of their role. Like, they were literally a physician extender. And that was their training. And it's evolved quite a bit. There's a lot more specialties and practices and coverage and stuff. So I think the professional organizations initiated the transition to better represent our role. In New Hampshire, through some friends of mine that actually work in government, who knew I would ever be involved in politics stuff. But last year, somebody introduced a bill in New Hampshire to change the name officially from physician assistant to physician associate. And strangely enough, like, the New Hampshire Medical Association really opposed it. Like, there was a lot of lobbying and pushback because they thought we were trying to get independent practice and disconnect from, supervised practice. And a few years before that, New Hampshire had passed a law that eliminated supervised practice and became collaborative practice. So when I first started, you had to have a supervising doctor, and they were limited in how many PAs they could oversee. And they essentially kind of signed off that you worked, under them, and they oversaw all of your care, and they read your notes, and they covered all your stuff. And you could practice to the level that they let you practice. So, like, when I started, it was less, it was more restrictive than it is now, but it wasn't very long before the PA started doing essentially independent. Like, we practice at such a high level that, once you're not blessed, but once you're kind of cleared by the doctors, and they have, some level of faith and trust in your skills, you don't have to talk to them about every patient being dispositioned and whatnot. A lot of places, you have to, you present every patient to the doctors, and they kind of approve and bless the disposition. That was kind of a tangent. So it's mostly trying to represent the role that we actually have. The collaborative part of our job is, now, if you've got a long career in PA, you don't have to have a doctor directly overseeing you. You have to have a doctor somewhere in a relationship, but there's no direct supervision part of it. So with my friends in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and through some lobbying efforts in the professional organization in New Hampshire, I believe we were the second or third state in the country to actually officially change the name to physician associate. And so
I think, it really is important for people to understand the difference between, like you said, the word assistant is, generally more on the entry level or things like that. And yeah, like, so we work in the ER together, and, I look at the PAs and in the mid-level providers, as they're called, and I'm like, I don't see the difference between you and the doctor. Like, there's, like, any case that comes through
I
that
see
door.
the difference. It's
Well, I'm sure
twice
you
a
do.
month.
I
Twice
bet.
a month when my paycheck comes in.
So that's one of the big things right there. And I kind of wanted to talk about it, but I didn't want to go too far into it. But from, again, working alongside you guys, I don't see the difference. Any case that comes in, whether it be a trauma, a major medical, level 1 sick level, like, super sick people, you guys are right there too. You're the primary provider. And, like, I don't even see the big differences. Now, I know that you guys have the ER attending there to collaborate with, and it's just like they do with the other providers. Like, they call in cards when it's a cardiology case, they call in, the endocrine when it's the endocrine case, like all these things. So, like, I don't see the big difference between you guys, and obviously there's a huge money gap, right? And that's without being said. So, like, I guess I'm happy to hear that there is some push to, make it more well known and more representative of what you do. Because, again, like, to my eyes, you guys are just like the doctors. Like, I don't,
Yeah, I mean, if you practice somewhere else, you may see it, it different. I know through years and years of doing this, I know my job, I know my role. I know I did not do 4 years of medical school. I did not do 3 years or 4 years of a residency. Like, I know I'm a paramedic who got a master's degree and is, working as a PA. So I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And, more often than not, we've had some PAs that have come through our system that just didn't actually understand that and practiced, at such a, not a high level, but so independently that they ended up getting kind of pushed out because they were a little bit of a risk. Um, but you'll see me, I'll go to every one of the doctors and be like, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I see this and I'm gonna do this. Am I on the right track? And hey, I need help. Can you come help me? Because this is outside of my comfort zone. So I think that's I know what I know and I know what I'm supposed to do. And I think any of the people that I work with, as APPs, they completely understand it and they grew up in that system. Well, two of us grew up in that system.
Hmm.
Um, but we know we know how it's supposed to go. And you know, I don't expect doctor money, because I'm not the doctor. And the nice part is that because they get doctor money and they're the doctor, the responsibility eventually ends up on them. We own a significant portion of liability because with that whole new collaborative agreement and the new change, it kind of actually takes away some of the physician liability for medical errors and whatnot. So we're kind of standing on our own, on our own 2 feet. But um, that's my relationship with my attending and my ability to say I need help is kind of what makes me better at what I do, because there's a humility and a hubris to being able to ask for help and understand that you're in over your head or you need clarification, because nobody knows everything. I mean, I'm
Right.
close, but I don't know everything.
Just outside of everything, but
Yeah, I'm
there's a
just right
few
on the
things.
edge of everything. Yeah.
And I think it's funny the way you said that you're a paramedic with a master's degree practicing as a PA, and it's funny because I feel like I'm a paramedic with my associate's degree practicing as an RN now, and it's I feel like when you become a paramedic, that just sticks with you. That's like who you are, and I don't know. And like one of our other associates that we work with, is also a paramedic, and she ended up turning PA, and I feel like you guys are just really similar, and like you can definitely see that background really come to light. And yeah, I've seen you and this other person I'm talking about, really like you guys really know when to be like, hey, I need help, or like this is shit's hitting the fan, let's get all hands on deck here. And it really does go to show that experience from being a paramedic and in that world of the pre-hospital care and all that, and then now taking it into the ER. Again, I think that you guys really excel on that side of it.
I mean, I've known her since literally 1993. Like, we've
Right.
been
She's awesome.
co-workers and associates since 1993. Like, it's all, yeah, it's, I like what I do. I actually like where I do it. Things are changing. That happens, but no, I'm perfectly content because now I go on ambulance calls and it's, oh, that's nothing. That's
Right.
no big deal. You should see the crap I had to do in the emergency room last week. This is nothing. Yeah.
It's funny. I keep saying, I'm like, man, I miss being like a full time medic. I really do. Like, if money wasn't a factor, I would be the first one to jump right back into that.
Some days I really do, and then other days I'm like, ugh, I can't. Like, if in a well, actually, that brings me to another point. I think I may have found a way to actually do that. Um,
Okay.
I, it's a possibility. I'm trying to work. So I've spent the last couple of years trying to get on committees and trying to do some learning aspects. Um, but there's a lot of kind of major metropolitan areas that actually have APPs in a fly car to do both emergency response and home treatment. So, you know, the example I try to use the most is, the ambulance get called out for a laceration. Somebody fell and, an old person fell or something and cut their head, or somebody fell and cut their arm. Um, well, I mean, do you really need an ambulance to take you to the hospital because you have a cut? Or can you sit there with, get an assessment done by the ambulance and be told, hey, somebody will be out here in about half an hour. And, one of the PAs comes out in their car in a Suburban or whatever, and they clean out your cut, they numb your cut up, they put 3 or 4 stitches in your cut, wrap you up, put a dressing on it. If they want antibiotics, you give them some antibiotics. And then on your calendar, a week later, you get notified that that person's stitches are ready to come out. You go back out to their house, do a wound check, make sure everything looks good, take their stitches out, and they never have to go to the ER. They're not in the waiting room for 8 hours. There's one less person in the queue to be seen. And the customer service aspect of it is your EMS crew is not tied up. Your emergency room is not bogged down. It's easy for, us to do stuff like that. It's a quick visit. And if you have, a super bad, shooting, whatever, blah, 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 and you need a chest tube in the field, well, there's a PA that, the PA can come and do the chest tube. So it's not, there's so many ways of kind of spreading that out, but there's a whole bunch of obstacles to all of that I had. It seems so easy. And then you try to do it and you're like, oh, that's not so easy.
Right. Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of different legalities, liabilities, how do you get funding for that?
Exactly.
How do you reimburse?
Funding, payment,
yeah,
liability, and even licensing. In New Hampshire, the Board of Medicine licenses doctors and PAs, but the Bureau of EMS licenses paramedics, and the Bureau of Nursing licenses nurses and nurse practitioners. And nobody interacts in anybody else's sandbox. So I can practice as a PA and I can practice as a paramedic, but I can't do any PA things on an ambulance because the PAs aren't licensed to practice at any level higher than, essentially paramedic.
and it would be really cool if it was more of like a playground where everybody actually did play nice, and it was easier to cross utilize your different certifications. Like you just said, like you're a PA, you're also a paramedic, you respond to this call like with the laceration, like you can patch that up right there. There's no need to go to the hospital. But and that's kind of where I think the future is kind of hopefully heading with the MIH stuff, right? Like that's a huge component now and a big push for the future is the mobile integrated health. And you have paramedics in the community paramedicine that are starting to, advance their own education and fulfill that role. And hopefully that's including, usage of PAs or, docs that want to get involved. And however we can, really change the healthcare system, because what we're doing right now, it's not working. It's clearly
It's
not working.
Clearly. Yeah. I think there's there's a lot of pushes towards, increasing the community paramedic role. Again, as an old guy, I have some reservations just because the model that people are under. So, yeah, there's pathophysiology. I mean, at least when I went to paramedic school, there's pathophysiology, but it was designed more for recognition. So, you hear about a heart failure patient and you see a patient that's got edema, short of breath. If it's really bad, they're frothing, their lung sounds are rails, like they're hypertensive, they're tachycardic, like all the things. And you're like, oh, this looks like a patient in heart failure. These are the things I need to do. It's very standardized. Like your state protocols tell you this is what you're supposed to do. And you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. So when you're, you take advanced first aid at the Red Cross and you're like, I got this. Look, I got a provider's license. I can work on the ambulance. And then you go to EMT school and you're like, oh, shit, that's way more than I thought. I thought I could do this. And then you go to like paramedic school and you're like, whoa, this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And then you're a paramedic for a bunch of years and you think you're the king shit. Like you've done everything. You've delivered babies, you've done codes, you've intubated, shit tons of people in cars upside down on the highway, hanging off a bridge by a rope on your belt. Like you've done all this shit. And then you go to medical school or PA school and you're like, oh, I had no idea.
Right.
That's why I do that? Oh, that makes so much more sense. And then, so you go through all this stuff. And even now, like as a PA, I'm like, one of our PAs is going to medical school. And I mean, she's super brilliant. Like she was a really, well-educated, well-versed PA. And she'll even tell you the only reason she's going to medical school is because people kept telling her that she was just a PA. Like, that's the only motivator that sent her to medical school, because
No
she didn't
shit.
want people to be able to tell her that anymore. She was like, I'll show you. I'll be a doctor. That's fine.
Right, which is her way, absolutely. Give you the big middle finger to them all.
It's
That's
exactly
straight
what
up
it
her.
is. So, and then I'm sure at some point, I mean, maybe not her, but other people, you walk into medical school and you're like, oh, this is way more than I thought I knew. Oh, so there's that, So, I mean, if you're trained to work on protocols, then when it's time to, if you have to think on your own, you're not necessarily trained for that. But there's a push to increase the training for that. So to increase like the medical training and kind of create a master's level paramedic. I am a master's level paramedic. And if I don't want to be a master's level paramedic anymore, I can go work in the OR, or I can go work in orthopedics, or I can go work in the hospital. So I mean, we have a system that we just have to tweak the system to make PAs or, clinicians, hospital providers work in the field if they want to. So I kind of piss people off when I say it, because they, I'm pro paramedic for the roles that paramedics are supposed to be in. But I think, you're trying to create a new position when you could kind of build the position around, like you could do other, you could do other things with the training and your and make yourself more, flexible and malleable and be able to do something, because eventually you're going to tire of doing stair chairs at 3 a.m. when the elevator's broken. And you'll be like, why am I still doing this? And the reality is, AMR or Rock or any of those companies are not going to pay you what a PA makes to do ambulance calls in the middle of the night, because you're still a paramedic.
Yep.
And they're not gonna pay you more. I mean, it's ridiculous how much they're paying. Not ridiculous from a bad perspective, but ridiculous as in, when I switched from a yellow-based ambulance to a blue-based ambulance back in 1997, I took a pay cut of 12 cents an hour to go to work for Rock. So I went from $9 an hour to $8.88 an hour. That was medic pay.
That's fucking insane.
When I left Cataldo, when I left Rock to go to Cataldo, I was a supervisor at Rock making $15 an hour. And I went to Cataldo and they were paying me $18 an hour. So, I mean, even though I know what they're offering people now for pay, but nobody's going to pay you what I'm making, because your billables aren't, like, you can't make, the billing isn't going to cover the cost of the person. So my primary example is Austin, Texas, and it's a county-based system, and the county actually funds the PAs. They get reimbursement from the insurance companies on a negotiated rate, but the PAs and the equipment and everything else is paid for by the county in taxpayers. So
I think there's a lot of potential in the future, but right now there's just no standard approach, and everybody's doing things differently. So, we can cherry pick from different agencies and how they're doing it, but again, to make everybody happy, everybody want to play nice in the sandbox and not give up the power here and power there, etc. Like, all of it just coming together. It's like putting water and oil together. I'm hopeful, I really am, but there's definitely so many challenges right now that it's a big restraint on this big potential. And at the end of the day, like, what are we all in this for, right? To provide for our community, like to better our community. At the end of the day, that is the big picture end goal. So
patient care, like, that's the whole thing we're doing this for.
Yeah, right. So, like, why wouldn't, if there are ways to make more services available and things like that, like, I feel like there should be a bigger push to try to figure this out and make some big changes in the healthcare system, because once again, it's not working, from the pre-hospital into the hospital into the long-term care. Like, there are so many problems, and I don't have the answers. I don't have all of them by any means, but I have some ideas that
it won't get fixed while we're working. It's not
right. No,
be,
God, no,
like,
no,
we're not
in
going to
our
solve
lifetime.
But I mean, there has to be, somebody has to kind of put the idea into somebody else's head to kind of start the ball rolling, or at least create a concept, or make one little step or effort to try to get. So one of the things when I became deputy fire chief, I joined the New Hampshire Fire Chiefs Association. A lot of people I known for years and years and years. And it's funny because now as we're older, all the people that were firemen and paramedics with me when I was a dispatcher or whatnot are now the chiefs and the bosses of all these things. So when you go to meetings, like, all these people because you worked with them 30 years ago. And there was an opportunity from that group to be put on the EMS coordinating board for the state. And that's one of the boards that is involved in licensure and creating things. So it gave me an opportunity where I can go to these board meetings and try to figure out how to change the legislature to get the licensing so that PAs and doctors can be licensed to work on an ambulance at their level. All over Europe, doctors are in fly cars and helicopters and everything else, and they're working field work, pre-hospital work, because it's so, there's more rural EMS stuff. But if you can get a doctor to your bedside, the paramedics can do so much to get you to a point, and then who does the paramedic call for help? Well, they call the doctor.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I mean, if the doctor's mobile and he can meet you somewhere and do doctor interventions, it's better for patient care. So, I mean, kind of expanding that. And the other thing is, if you've got PAs and doctors that want to do it, I mean, there's fellowship trained EMS doctors. We had one that left to go down to Connecticut, but she worked in your old system.
Yep.
And she was an EMS trained doctor. There's a thing now. So, I have a certificate a specialty certificate in emergency medicine. And one of the professional groups is trying to lobby our accreditation board to create a certification for an EMS PA, to make a specialty certification just to do EMS. So, I mean, things are in motion. Things are going in the right direction. How long it takes to get a little bit of traction in New Hampshire, we'll see. I'm working on it.
Right. So
I
instead
gotta
of
figure
just
out something to do so when I'm gone, people remember me. I mean, I know that most
Right.
of them will remember me, but I need something to be like, people have medals and awards and stuff named after them. I'm like, I need something. I gotta do something important.
I love it. A lot of us just sit and bitch about it, but nobody really, not a lot of us take the steps to make the change. So I love the fact that you got yourself involved. You put yourself in positions to potentially, influence some kind of change or at least get that ball rolling.
I mean, it's better than just doing dick jokes, which I'm really good at, inappropriate humor. I'm really good at, I tell everybody there's two things I'm really good at. I'm really good at airways and I'm really good at inappropriate jokes.
And the best part about, EMS and even in the ER and stuff like that is we have some of the funniest conversations. And again, unless you're in this world, people on the outside would just look at us like, we're sick, twisted, all of it. It's it's part of that dark humor and the way we kind of handle the chaos and the craziness of the things that we see. And, it just kind of goes hand in hand with that.
And I mean, we even have these conversations, at inappropriate times, in inappropriate situations. But, it's not meant to be disrespectful or harmful. It's just how we deal with stuff. I've been in therapy for years and years and years. But I realized at some point I tend to dissociate. I'm task oriented and treatment oriented. And, at some point I have to stop and understand that it's a human that we're working on and
Right.
not just a mannequin. But in order for me to not feel horrible about the person, in order for me to get tasks done, I have to disassociate that human from my needs, what I have to do for work. So it took years of therapy to figure out that, I don't really connect with the patients until afterwards. There are means I have to fix them.
That's your approach to kind of keeping yourself grounded and to really separate the mental side of things and the mental health side of what we do. I mean, we see some pretty horrific shit and some bad things happen to some really good people. And I think one of the sayings that really stuck with me early on in my career was, hey, this is not your emergency. It sucks. It's terrible and I can empathize, but at the end of the day, this is not your emergency. So whatever you need to do to disassociate or kind of handle it, do what you got to do, but then put it somewhere and kind of not leave it there and bury it, but disassociate. This is a job for you. So to be able to continue doing this for as long as you have, you got to have some kind of coping skills, or like you said, you've gone through therapy to really help you handle this. So I think that's a really great point to bring up of, how do you deal with these things that we see on a daily basis?
It's funny. I had a realization a couple of years ago. I was at a mental health seminar in Concord, and this is gonna sound like such a dick thing. So I'm at this seminar in Concord, and there's a whole bunch of people that are both colleagues and mentors that are going up, doing talks at this seminar, and and all of them are starting off their stories with, "Oh, I got into this to take care of people, and I got into this because I really wanted to make a difference, and I got into this because I really care about blah 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 blah." And my therapist that I see is a first responder kind of specialist person, and she was actually in the back of the room. And at some point within the next, I think probably within the next month, during one of our sessions, I was sitting there and I went, "I'm gonna talk about something that seems really, really wrong, and just listen to me for a few minutes." And she's like, "Yeah, of course, whatever." And I went, "So you and I were at that seminar, and you heard all these people, and they're all getting up in the front, and they're all talking about how they got into this to, make a difference and help people and save lives and all this stuff." And I looked at her and I went, "Is it wrong? I just got into this because I'm really good at it. Like, I don't really like, I don't, it was not about helping people. It was just like, I was really good at it. And I just kind of went down that path. Like, it's not, I like helping people. I like making a difference. I like lights and sirens. I like all the things about this, but my motivation was not, altruistic. It was more, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just went with it."
No, I mean, I think the realization of like where you personally come from and the way you approach it is that's you're allowed to have that feeling, and but like you still approach it with the mindset of like this is still a person, like we still want to do what's right by them, but you found your calling, and because you're good at it, that naturally kind of projects the altruistic, approach where it's like we want to do right by everybody and just help and be that genuinely good person. But it's okay to have that personal feeling of like I'm really good at this, and and that's why I do this. Like I don't know, I think that's cool. I had no problem with
I
it.
mean, except for the people that'll watch the podcast, everybody else will think I'm doing it because I'm here to help people.
You know? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like an added bonus, I guess, right? It's like,
I mean,
yeah, you made a difference. Cool.
yeah, I'm not here to hurt anybody. I'm just here to help. We'll get you through it.
I love it. I love it. And then, so you talked to me a little bit about too that moment of like when your shift is over, and how that feeling of zen, kind of just that first breath of fresh air. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, is that like your way of kind of just mind dumping everything that just happened, or you know?
It's also it's a weird, and it's only something I've realized within the past year or so. Um, Walking out the door of the hospital, I don't know if it's because you're inside for 8, 10, 12 hours or however long you're inside. Um, but walking out and taking like that breath of cool, clean, not hospital air, is such a cleansing, um, both like physically and emotional thing. Um, and there's a level of, there was a couple of nights, like a couple of weeks ago, where somehow miraculously the attending doctor disappeared when all the critical patients were coming in. So that kind of left me to manage it.
You
And
don't say.
I'm sure it was not intentional. I mean, it just
Right.
happened to time out that way. But I ended up doing a couple of critical patients. And at the end of the night, when you walk out and you take that breath of air, you're like, I made it. Like I got through it. It was fine. And it was, again, it was like the codes when you're a paramedic. Like you managed, you got through everything. It was smooth. It was appropriate. Like nothing bad happened. It was, you managed to get all the things you needed to get done, and the patient did well. Um, so there's that zen of, you don't have to think about what you're doing. Like you just do, and you just react, and it's with experience and, multiple times of doing stuff. And there's a gut instinct part of it. There's a gestalt that comes with all of this, that you're like, oh, I actually know what I'm doing. I'm actually good at this. I can take, my shift is over. I made it through. I did okay. And you just take a deep breath and you cleanse and everything goes away. And, you can come back another day into the chaos that is it and do it again. And I mean, not every shift is, every shift has been horrible, but not every shift is so, so much acuity. A lot of it's just running through the mill. Um, but when you have those moments of acuity where you do what you're supposed to do and you get through it, um, and then you could kind of zen through that. And you're like, oh, all right, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I kind of look at those nights where everything just goes well. And like you said, when you leave and you're like, all right, I don't feel like I'm going to be taking anything home with me. I'm not perseverating or where something I missed or whatever, right? Like on those nights, you just really got to cherish those. Like, hey, nothing went bad. Everything went pretty well. I can go home and just enjoy myself. And, and because in this world, like anything can go awry at any given time, no matter how good you're doing or whatever. Like, you can get humbled pretty quick. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So I appreciate that. Like on those moments, just like let's appreciate that we made it another shift, and that's the
yeah,
reality of emergency medicine.
yeah.
All right, Mo. So I want to say thank you once again, man. This has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I have one final thing that I want to kind of bring into this conversation here. This is something now I'm a newer nurse, and and as you know, like we've been doing a patient assignment as a paramedic, which was a big change and all that. And I've started to develop some things that I would really personally like to see change, and especially working as a nurse now. So my from the nursing perspective to the provider, one thing I feel like could improve would be the communication. I feel like the plan of what we're going to be doing for the patient and things like that sometimes isn't always discussed, and it's not intentional. Like at any point in time, like I can come to you and be like, "Hey, what's your plan?" And you're like, "All right, this is what we're going to do." Boom, boom, boom. And but sometimes I do feel like there's that miscommunication or that plan isn't fully discussed. So that's my from the nurse to the provider. Now my question for you, and feel free to like comment on that. But my question for you would be from the provider standpoint, looking back at the nursing staff, what is one thing that you would, like to see improve from us?
So from your commentary, that will, without explicitly getting like the plans from our heads into your thing, as you go through and you do this more and more, you will you'll create the associations of the plans, and you'll be like, oh, that provider, and it's going to vary from provider to provider, just like I have to learn that one doctor likes this medicine and one doctor likes this medicine. So if you ever say, hey, I'm going to give that person that for a urinary tract infection, you're going to get pushback and be like, that's not a urinary tract infection. That's not the antibiotic. We don't, who did that EKG? Why did you do an EKG for that? And you have to know each and every, provider and what they do and what they don't do. As
That's
you go
funny.
through, like you'll see these trends and you'll start to create the associations in your head. Like you'll be like, oh, that person has this, and this. Last time they did this, it was this, and this. And, we'll see if it goes. And I mean, and any of us are, I mean, I don't know how it's going to be, but any of us now are more than willing to share. And if you ask, I mean, the hardest part is trying to explain thought processes. So,
Mhm.
me telling you how my algorithmic brain works, it's hard. Like I can't really explain it to you. Um, and like I said, a lot of it is just gut. Like it's how I feel. Like it's what I see, or something triggered that hair on the back of your neck, that spidey sense. Like there's something you just feel. From the provider to the nursing aspect of it, I don't know, because it's going to sound like individual bitching, and it's not meant to be bitching.
It's all
It's
right. I know
there's
it's a tough
so
question.
there's so much pressure on us to kind of see patients and move meat and get things done. And I know all of the nurses are at their capacity as far as patient volume and tasks, but they always seem to find time to chit chat and bullshit about, like, you know what I mean? So even though you hear we're saturated, there's still jibber jabber going on, and there's tasks that aren't getting done. So, I mean, I think a little bit more, again, it's situational, but a little bit more attention to, if I'm putting in orders for something, I'm hoping that within the next 30 minutes, you're going to see that I put an order in for something 30 minutes ago and it's going to get done. So, and I mean, and then if they want to, if the nurses want to learn stuff, or they want to ask questions, or they want to do whatever, I'll be more than happy to help out and participate. Oh, and don't be dumb. I'm tired of dumb. Just don't. Just come on now. You've answered that question yourself 54 times in the last month. Like, why are you asking that question again? I don't know if you know in particular, but
I mean, I have my suspicions. I have my suspicions. Yep. Yep. No, so I mean that's good though. I mean, be attentive. Like, if you're gonna sit there and jibber jab, make sure your shit's done. Like, be a professional. So
and I mean, I'm all for the jibber jabber and the
Sure.
social. I mean, that's how people make bonds, and that's how that's how you have a better work experience if you have a good time in your work. It's just hard from my perspective, individually. My perspective is that I've got this caseload and I don't have the opportunity to jibber jabber and bullshit. We try like little interjections and stuff, but we're doing hard work and we're doing a lot of it, and it's a volume thing nowadays. So just a little bit more attentiveness, and then if there's a question as to why we're doing something, just ask and I'll do my best to make something up.
I love that. Nice. Welcome into the brain of Mo.
Yeah.
No, yeah, man. And again, like I said, I've approached you on several occasions, like, hey, just walk me through this. Why are we doing this? And it's not like a challenging question. It's like, hey, teach me something. And I think there's an approach, right? There's using certain tact involved. I mean, like, instead of coming off aggressive, you're like, why are we doing this? Hey, can you help me understand, why we're approaching it like this, or what's your reasoning? Just, I want to learn something. And again, I think that's a personality issue at that level, but that's good advice, So again, be a little bit more attentive to what we need to get done, and make sure that attention to detail is not missed in getting our shit done.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm more than willing to make it work, and we'll figure it out. I'm pretty easy. I'm pretty laid back.
You are.
I'm not a super aggressive kind of guy. I'll stand over here and watch and figure something. If you need me, I'll help you out. I'll just be over here. Just let me know if you need me.
Right. Right. I for one have always been comfortable approaching you, and I think it's evolving, and again, the more you get to know people, the more comfortable you get, and that's just like any working relationship. So
yeah. In the old days, they used to call me like unapproachable and intimidating. And I'm like, there's a difference between intimidating and having expectations of you being able to do your work.
Right. Right. And that's it. There is a very big difference there. And I think sometimes those understandings get a little fuzzy, if you will, and some people, need to be held accountable, and I'm all for it. But all right, Mo, I really appreciate this. This has been a great time. Really quick, was there anything social that I know you're not in like the social medias and stuff like that? Was there anything that you wanted to promote? Was there anything you're working towards or anything like that?
No, I'm pretty low key. So no, I'm not, everything's kind of changed in the last year or so. So, I'm not aggressively looking for other employment. I've settled on my plan moving forward and stuff. So no, I don't do I don't do much on the social media. I do some, work stuff on LinkedIn, but I've had people, I did a presentation a couple of years ago at a conference, and they're like, put on your social media handles. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like I had to Google it to figure out how to put in a LinkedIn handle thing or whatever. I'm like, I'll be all right.
That's awesome. You gotta love it. Like, the technology is evolving, and you're like, no, I'm good. I don't need that.
Well,
shit.
I mean, how I get in so much trouble on social media. Like, I just start.
Very true. It's probably better to keep you sheltered a little bit.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mo. Well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate this. This has been a great time, and we will talk soon, brother.
Yeah, no, congratulations on the whole thing. I'm really happy that somebody I know is actually making a difference on this, and everybody, you watch it and you're like, oh, I could do that. And then you're like, nah, I don't feel like it. At least you're taking a shot at it and making a go at it.
That's it. I'm
Yeah.
I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's been fun, in between the podcast and doing like the TikTok thing, and
Yeah.
it's definitely been a journey so far, and it's been fun,
Yeah.
and as long
I
as
think
it's
it's
fun, I'm going to continue to do it. So, yeah,
yeah.
we'll see where the
I think it's
future of this
great.
goes to.
I'm happy
What's
for
that?
you. Good job.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I do.
Yeah, no worries.
So, all right, man. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
You as well.